Captain Hanul stared at the message screen in his small cabin aboard the Earthship Retribution. The recording was old, or so the seller had told him. 3 years old, from a sector that everyone said was dead now. But something felt wrong about it. The alien on the screen was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. A Villani, one of the peaceful doctor species that helped everyone in the galaxy. The creature was crying, which looked strange, because Villani tears were silver. "Please, anyone who can hear this," the alien said in broken human language. "They came to our world. They take our children. They hurt our people. The council will not help us. They say we are lost. Please, if anyone hears this, we are still here. We are still dying." The message cut off. Hanul played it again. Then again. Something about the background bothered him. He called up his computer, expert Una. Una was small even for a human woman, but she could make computers do anything. She looked at the message for 5 minutes. Then her face went pale. "Captain," she said slowly, "this message is not 3 years old. The timestamp says it was sent yesterday." Hanul felt his stomach drop. "That's impossible. Sector 7 Delta went dark 3 years ago. The council said the Cricks killed everyone there. The council lied." Una's voice was flat. "Someone has been blocking these signals. Look at this." She showed him her computer screen. Numbers and codes filled it, but Hanul could read enough to understand. Hundreds of messages, all from the same sector, all recent, all blocked before they could reach anyone who might help. Hanul called his crew to the bridge. Minho came first, as always. The weapons expert was a big man with scars on his hands from the corporate wars back on Earth. He looked at the message, and his face turned hard. "How many?" Minho asked. "We don't know yet," Hanul said. "But if they're still sending signals..." Jiwan arrived next. The combat medic was quiet and kind. But Hanul had seen her work during the worst battles Earth had ever fought. She watched the alien's message 3 times without speaking. When it ended, she looked up with tears in her eyes. "They're harvesting them," she said quietly. "That's why they keep them alive. The Villani can regrow body parts. The Cricks are probably cutting them up and letting them heal, then cutting them up again." Taehyun slipped onto the bridge like a shadow. The spy and infiltration expert never made noise when he moved. He had been listening from the doorway. "I know about the Cricks," he said. "They don't just kill. They play with their food first. If the Villani are still alive after 3 years..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Hanul looked at his crew. These 4 people had followed him through hell during Earth's worst wars. They had seen what evil looked like when it wore a human face. Now they were looking at something worse. "The council knows," Hanul said. "They have to know. But they're not doing anything because they're afraid of the Cricks military." "The council never told Earth about this either," Una added. "We're still probationary members. They don't think we're important enough to know about genocide." Minho cracked his knuckles. It was a sound like breaking bones. "So what do we do, Captain?" Hanul looked at the star charts. Sector 7 Delta was 2 weeks away if they used the normal space lanes. But the Retribution was not a normal ship. It had been built using technology from Earth's darkest period, when humans had learned to fight wars that left no survivors. "We go help them," Hanul said simply. "The council will call it a violation of the peace treaty," Jiwan warned. "Earth could lose its membership." "The council can burn," Minho said. "We don't leave kids to die." Taehyun nodded. "The Cricks think no one will come for the Villani. They think everyone is too afraid of them." "They're wrong," Hanul said. "Una, how long to get there using the shadow drive?" Una smiled for the first time since seeing the message. The shadow drive was Earth's secret. Other species didn't know humans had learned to move through dark space, the empty areas between stars where sensors couldn't see them. 4 days, she said. "Maybe 3 if I push the engines." "Do it." Hanul turned to the others. "This is not a council mission. This is not official. If anyone wants to leave the ship at the next station, I'll understand." His crew looked at him like he had said something stupid. "Captain," Jiwan said gently, "we all saw the corporate wars. We know what happens when good people do nothing while monsters kill children." "The Cricks have been doing this for 3 years," Minho added. That means they think they're safe. They think no one will stop them. They've never met humans before, Taehyun said with a cold smile. Hanul nodded. During the corporate wars, Earth had learned terrible lessons about fighting enemies who showed no mercy. The corporations had used child soldiers, poison gas, and torture as weapons. Humanity had been forced to become something darker than their enemies to survive. The galaxy thought humans were just another peaceful species. They were wrong. Set course for Sector 7 Delta, Hanul ordered, and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're investigating reports of pirate activity. It was not really a lie. Pirates took people and sold them. The Kricks were just very large pirates with their own government. As the retribution slipped into dark space invisible to all sensors, Hanul watched the Villani message one more time. The alien's voice broke as it begged for help that had never come. "We're coming," he said to the empty air, "and we're bringing everything we learned from our own monsters." Behind him, his crew prepared for war. They cleaned weapons that were designed to kill quickly and quietly. They studied star charts of a sector that was supposed to be empty. They planned an attack on an enemy that had never lost a battle. The Kricks had spent 3 years teaching the galaxy that mercy was weakness. Soon they would learn what humans had discovered during their darkest days. Sometimes mercy was a luxury that monsters didn't deserve. The retribution moved through the darkness between stars, carrying death toward those who had thought themselves safe. In the silence of space, no one could hear the ship coming. The retribution dropped out of dark space at the edge of Sector 7 Delta. What they saw made the crew go silent. Thessia Prime had once been beautiful. The Villani built their cities to look like living things, with towers that curved like trees, and bridges that seemed to grow from one building to another. Now those cities looked like wounds in the planet's surface. "Dear God," Jiwon whispered, staring at her scanner screen. The Kricks had changed everything. Where once there had been parks and schools, now there were massive concrete buildings with no windows. Smoke rose from tall chimneys carrying ash that fell like gray snow on what remained of the Villani cities. "Those are processing plants," Taehyun said quietly. He had seen similar buildings during his spy work. Industrial level. They're not just killing them one by one. This is a factory. Hanul felt something cold settle in his chest. During the corporate wars, he had seen human factories that turned people into products. He had hoped never to see such things again. Yuna worked at her computers trying to count the facilities. 17 major processing centers on this continent alone, she reported. Each one big enough to handle thousands of people at once. Minho was studying the military installations. 3 orbital defense platforms, 47 ground bases, about 50,000 Krick soldiers total. And how many Villani left? Hanul asked. Yuna's hands stopped moving on her keyboard. Bioscanners show maybe 2 million still alive on the whole planet. There used to be 20 million Villani on Thessia Prime alone. The numbers hit the crew like physical blows. 18 million people gone, and the killing was still happening. "Look at this," Taehyun said. He had hacked into a Krick's communication channel. The translation came through their computers in flat, emotionless words. "Batch 447 ready for processing. Organs show 97% viability. Children in holding area 12 are approaching optimal harvest age." Jiwon made a sound like she was going to be sick. "They're talking about children like they're crops." "It gets worse," Taehyun continued, his face pale. "They're keeping detailed records. They've been testing which age groups regenerate fastest. They keep some Villani alive for months, cutting out organs and letting them heal, then cutting them again. They're conscious during the procedures," Yuna added, reading more files. "The Kricks believe fear and pain improve organ quality." Hanul closed his eyes. He had thought he understood evil during the corporate wars. The corporations had been brutal and greedy, but they had still been human. They could be reasoned with sometimes. They had limits. The Kricks had no limits. "Captain," Minho said, "I'm reading movement in Sector 7. Looks like they're moving a group of Villani toward Processing Center 12. Hanul opened his eyes and looked at the screen. Tiny dots moved across the surface, but his computer enhanced the image. He could see Crick soldiers pushing a group of Villani prisoners toward a building with smoking chimneys. The group was mostly children. "How long until they reach the processing center?" he asked. 6 hours, Minho replied. "Can we save them?" "Not all of them, maybe 50 or 60 kids if we hit fast and hard." Hanno looked at his crew. Jiwon was crying silently, watching the children on the screen. Yuna was reading more Crick's files, her face getting paler with each page. Taehyun was planning infiltration routes with the cold focus he used when planning assassinations. Minho was counting weapons and calculating kill ratios. "If we save those kids, the Cricks will know we're here," Hanel said. "We'll lose the advantage of surprise." "So we save them fast and then we finish this," Minho said simply. "All of it?" Jiwon asked. "The whole planet?" "Every last one of them," Taehyun said. His voice was soft, but there was something in it that would have scared normal people. "They've been doing this for 3 years. They've killed 18 million civilians. They torture children for fun." "The council will say we committed genocide," Yuna warned. "The council let this happen," Hanyul replied. "They knew the Cricks were here. They knew what was happening. They chose to look away because they were afraid." He pulled up the star charts of the system. 3 orbital platforms with heavy weapons, dozens of ground installations, thousands of soldiers. By every rule of military strategy, it was impossible. 5 humans could not defeat an entire Cricks invasion force. But Hanul remembered something his old commander had told him during the corporate wars. Impossible just means no one has done it yet. "We're going to kill all of them," he said calmly. "Every Cricks soldier on this planet, every Cricks officer in orbit, every Cricks ship in the system." "That's not rescue mission," Jiwon said. "That's extermination." "Yes," Hanul agreed. "It is." His crew looked at him for a long moment. Then, one by one, they nodded. "Those children being moved to the processing center," Minho said. "We save them first." "Agreed. Then we start with the orbital platforms. Cut off their escape routes." "I can hack their communication systems," Yuna offered. "Make them think they're under attack by a full fleet." "I'll take out their command centers," Taehyun added. "Once their officers are dead, the regular soldiers will panic, and I'll treat the survivors," Jiwon said quietly. "Both the rescue and the aftermath. Some of those Villani children will need serious medical help." Hanal looked at the planet below them. Somewhere down there, children were being prepared for slaughter. Their families were already dead. Their cities were already ash. The galaxy had abandoned them to monsters. But humans had learned something during their darkest years that the rest of the galaxy didn't understand. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster was to become something worse. "Prep for combat drop," Hanul ordered. "And remember, no Cricks prisoners. They gave up the right to mercy 3 years ago." As his crew moved to their stations, Hanul watched the children on the screen. They were so small, so scared. They had no idea that death was coming from the stars to answer their prayers. The Cricks had spent 3 years teaching the galaxy that strength was all that mattered. They were about to learn what human strength looked like when it was aimed at something that deserved to die. The Retribution began its descent toward the planet, invisible to Crick's sensors, carrying 5 humans who had decided that some sins could only be answered with blood. Humans came from a world that tried to kill them every day. While other species evolved on gentle planets with mild weather and friendly animals, humans had crawled up from a world of ice ages and volcanoes, poisonous plants, and predators that hunted in packs. Earth had earthquakes that could split continents and storms that could level cities. Disease, famine, and natural disasters had shaped every human instinct. Other species in the galaxy had learned to cooperate because their worlds rewarded cooperation. Humans had learned to survive because their world rewarded only the strongest and smartest killers. This was why the galaxy called them Deathworlders. Yuna worked through the night in the ship's engineering bay, turning mining explosives into orbital bombardment weapons. Her hands moved with the steady skill of someone who had built bombs during Earth's corporate wars, when human cities had burned and only the clever survived. The orbital platforms won't expect an attack from below, she explained to Minho as she worked. Their shields are designed to stop other ships, not missiles launched from the planet's surface. Minho nodded, programming targeting solutions into the guidance systems. During the corporate wars, he had learned to destroy entire city blocks with single shots. The Krix installations were bigger targets than corporate headquarters had been. 27 charges, all synchronized, he said. Hit all 3 platforms at once. No survivors, no escape pods, no distress signals. What about the ground installations? Taehyun asked. He was studying floor plans of Krix military bases, looking for weak points. Life support systems, Yuna replied without looking up from her work. Cut their air, cut their power, cut their water, then seal the exits so they can't get out. That's not killing them in battle, Jiwon said quietly. That's suffocating them like rats. Yuna's hands stopped moving. She looked up at the medic with eyes that had seen too much during humanity's darkest years. They've been suffocating Vellani. Children for 3 years, she said simply. They can have the same death they gave to others. Jiwon nodded slowly. During the corporate wars, she had treated children who had been used as test subjects for biological weapons. She knew what monsters looked like when they wore civilized faces. The Krix think they're apex predators, Minho said. They've been the biggest bullies in the galaxy for so long they've forgotten what real predators look like. Hanul entered the engineering bay carrying a cup of coffee and a data pad. I've been reading their military files. The Krix have never lost a major battle. They've conquered 47 different species over the last 200 years. Because they pick on civilians, Taehyun pointed out. They attack peaceful species that don't fight back. When was the last time they faced someone who actually wanted to kill them? Never, Hanul said. Their entire military doctrine is based on intimidation. They make examples of the first few planets they attack, and everyone else surrenders without fighting. That won't work on us, Yuna said, returning to her bomb-making. Humans don't surrender. It's not in our nature. This was true. During the corporate wars, human armies had fought to the last soldier rather than give up. Human cities had burned to ash rather than accept corporate rule. When faced with extinction, humans had chosen to take their enemies with them rather than submit. The galaxy thought this made humans crazy. They were probably right. How long until we reach the planet? Hanul asked. 3 hours, Yuna replied. The Krix won't detect us until we're already in the atmosphere. By then it will be too late. Minho was checking his weapons. The rifle he carried had been designed to kill corporate security officers wearing full battle armor. Krix soldiers wore lighter protection. Captain, are we taking prisoners? No. Rules of engagement? If it's Krix, it dies. Jiwon looked up from her medical supplies. What about Krix who try to surrender? Hanul's face went cold. Did they accept Vellani surrenders? No, sir, then we don't accept theirs. This was the lesson humans had learned during the corporate wars. Mercy was a luxury that only worked when both sides agreed to it. When facing an enemy that showed no mercy, showing mercy in return was just another way of committing suicide. Taehyun was studying the psychological profiles of Krix soldiers. They're not used to being afraid. Their entire culture is based on making other people scared of them. When they realize they're being hunted instead of hunting, they'll probably break. Good, Minho said. Scared enemies make mistakes. What? About their families? Jiwon asked. Do Krix have children on their ships? Hanul checked the scanner reports. No civilians in the system. This is a military operation. Everyone here is a soldier or directly supporting the genocide. So everyone here chose to be part of this, Yuna said. It wasn't a question. Everyone here is guilty, Hanul confirmed. Azeu. The Retribution approached Thessia Prime. The crew made their final preparations. They cleaned weapons that had been designed to kill efficiently and quietly. They programmed explosives that would turn Krix installations into crematoriums. They planned an attack that would leave no survivors and no witnesses. Other species in the galaxy fought wars to gain territory or resources. Humans had learned to fight wars to completely destroy their enemy's ability to ever threaten them. Again, the Cricks think they're monsters, Taehyun said as he loaded infiltration gear. They've probably never met anything worse than they are. They're about to, Minho replied. Hanul looked at his crew. These 4 people had followed him through the worst battles in human history. They had seen what evil looked like when it had power. They had learned to fight it with methods that would horrify peaceful species. Remember, he said quietly, we're not here to win a battle. We're here to solve a problem. When we leave this system, the Cricks problem will be permanently solved. His crew nodded. They understood. This wasn't war in the traditional sense, this was extermination. The Cricks had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. Now they would learn what humans were capable of. As Thesia Prime grew larger on their screens, the humans prepared to show the galaxy why their homeworld was classified as a death world. They had learned their lessons in the cruelest school in the universe, a planet that rewarded only survivors. The Cricks had spent 3 years being the monsters in other people's nightmares. Tonight they would learn what it felt like when the nightmares started hunting back. The attack began at exactly 3:00 a.m. local time, when the Cricks' night shift was at its smallest and most tired. Yuna's bombs exploded simultaneously across all 3 orbital platforms. She had calculated the charges perfectly. The explosions didn't just damage the platforms. They tore them apart from the inside, ripping through hull plating and support structures like tissue paper. Platform Alpha simply vanished in a ball of white light that was visible from the planet's surface. Platform Beta broke in half, its 2 pieces spinning away into space as atmosphere vented from every breach. Platform Gamma lasted almost 10 seconds before secondary explosions turned it into an expanding cloud of metal fragments. All orbital platforms destroyed, Yuna reported calmly. No survivors detected. The Cricks fleet, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. Their military doctrine had never prepared them for this. Nobody attacked the Cricks. The Cricks were the attackers. Admiral Vorthak, commanding the Cricks battleship Flesh Render, screamed orders at his bridge crew. Find them! Where did that attack come from? His sensor operator, a junior officer whose hands were shaking, stared at empty screens. Sir, I'm not detecting any ships. The attack came from nowhere. Ships don't attack from nowhere, Vorthak roared. Find me targets. But there were no targets to find. The Retribution moved through space like a ghost, using stealth technology that the Cricks had never seen before. Human ships were designed to fight wars where being detected meant death. Minho watched the Cricks fleet through his targeting scope. 17 warships, all painted in the blood-red colors that were supposed to terrify their enemies. They moved in formation like parade floats, more concerned with looking impressive than being effective. They fight like they're still scaring civilians, he said with disgust. Look at that formation. They're trying to intimidate an enemy they can't even see. Hanul studied the tactical display. The Cricks ships were clustering together, exactly like untrained soldiers did when they were afraid. It made them easier targets. Target the flagship first, he ordered. Cut off their command structure. The Retribution appeared out of empty space directly above the Flesh Render. For a moment, the Cricks crew stared in shock at the human ship that had materialized from nowhere. Then Minho's weapons spoke. The humans didn't use fancy energy weapons or exotic missiles. They used simple, brutal kinetic rounds, chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds. When they hit the Flesh Render's hull, they punched through armor like bullets through paper. Admiral Vorthak had time to open his mouth in shock before a round tore through the bridge, turning him and his entire command crew into red mist. The Retribution vanished again before the other Crick ships could even aim their weapons. Flagship destroyed, Minho reported, moving to secondary targets. The next victim was the cruiser Paingiver. It exploded when human weapons found its ammunition storage. The blast was so powerful it damaged 2 nearby ships, which made them easier targets for the next attack. This is impossible, screamed Captain Gorthek from the destroyer Bone Crusher. How can one ship destroy our entire fleet? His question was answered when the Retribution appeared directly behind him, and put a kinetic round through his ship's engine. The Bone Crusher died in space, powerless and helpless. The human tactics were devastating in their simplicity. Appear, from nowhere deliver a killing blow, then vanish before the enemy could respond. It was like fighting a ghost that could bite back. "They're using some kind of cloaking device," reported the sensor operator on the heavy cruiser Soul Eater. "I can't track them between attacks, then we spread out," ordered Captain Drexer. "Cover more space, they can't be everywhere at once." He was wrong. Human ships were designed to fight against superior numbers. The Retribution could attack from any angle, at any time, using weapons that the Krix had never encountered before. By the end of the first hour, 12 Krix ships had been destroyed. The survivors were scattered across the system, afraid to group together but equally afraid to be alone. "Sir," reported a trembling communications officer, "3 of our ships are requesting permission to retreat to hyperspace." Captain Drexer considered this. Retreat was not part of Krix military doctrine. The Krix were supposed to be the ones making other people retreat. "Negative," he finally replied. "We find this human ship and destroy it, or we die trying." It turned out to be the second option. The Retribution found the scattered Kree ships one by one. Each death was quick and efficient. Human weapons didn't waste time with fancy displays or dramatic explosions. They simply punched holes in vital systems until the target stopped working. "Where are they?" Captain Vexthor screamed from the bridge of the Child Flenser. "How can we fight an enemy we can't see?" His answer came in the form of a kinetic round that tore through his ship's bridge. The Child Flenser joined the growing field of debris that had once been the pride of the Krix fleet. Down. On the planet's surface, Krix ground commanders watched their orbital support disappear ship by ship. Communication from the fleet became sporadic, then stopped entirely. "This is impossible," General Krulex muttered, staring at his tactical displays. "No single ship could destroy our entire orbital force." "Sir," his aide reported nervously, "we're also detecting multiple explosions at our ground installations. Someone is attacking our supply depots and communication centers." Krulex felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not the comfortable fear he inflicted on others, but real terror at the thought of being hunted by something more dangerous than himself. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements immediately." But his communications officer was already shaking his head. "Sir, all our orbital communication relays have been destroyed. We can't reach High Command." "Then send a ship to carry the message." "Sir, there are no ships left." General Krulex stared at the reports coming in from across the planet. Ground installations exploding, supply convoys disappearing, communication networks failing, and somewhere in orbit the burned remains of 17 warships drifted in the darkness. "What are we fighting?" he whispered. His aide, a young officer who had joined the military to terrorize aliens, was crying. "I don't know, sir, but whatever it is, it's killing everything we have." In space above them, the Retribution finished destroying the last Krix ship. The pain dealer died with a flash of light that briefly illuminated the debris field where a fleet had once been. "Orbital phase complete," Minho reported. "All Krix ships destroyed. No survivors detected." Hanel nodded with satisfaction. The first part of the plan was finished. The Krix could no longer escape, and they could no longer call for help. "Begin ground operations," he ordered. The Retribution turned toward the planet, where 50,000 Krix soldiers waited in bases they thought were safe. They were about to learn that safety was an illusion, and mercy was a luxury that monsters couldn't afford. The ground war was not a battle. It was an extermination. Taehyun hit the ground first, dropping from the Retribution in a stealth pod that landed silent as falling snow. His target was the main Krix command center, a massive concrete bunker that housed General Krulex and his staff. The Krix had built their defenses to keep people in, not to keep attackers out. Their fences and guard towers were designed to stop escaping prisoners, not infiltrating soldiers. Taehyun slipped through their perimeter like smoke. He had learned to move in silence during Earth's corporate wars, when a single footstep could mean death. The Krix guards used to terrorizing helpless civilians never knew he was there until it was too late. The first sentry died with Taehyun's knife in his throat. The second guard simply vanished, there one moment, gone the next, leaving only a small pool of dark blood. The third guard had time to open his mouth before Taehyun's hands twisted his neck with a sound like breaking wood. "Command center infiltrated," Taehyun whispered into his radio. "Moving to primary targets." General Krulex was in his office, staring at reports of explosions across the planet. His aide sat nearby, still crying softly as more bad news arrived every minute. "Sir," a communications officer reported, "we've lost contact with bases 12, 15, and 22. They're just gone." "Gone how?" Krulex demanded. "Unknown, sir. Their signals just stopped." Krulex was about to respond when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the command center in red light that made everything look like blood. "What happened to the power?" Krulex shouted. No one answered. No one could answer. Taehyun had cut the main power lines and sealed the backup generators with explosive charges. The command center was now running on battery power that would last maybe an hour. "Sir," the aide whispered, "I think we should evacuate." General Krulex was about to agree when the doors to his office opened. A shadow moved in the red-lit doorway, human-shaped but wrong somehow, like darkness given form. "General Krulex," Taehyun said politely, "I have a message for you." "Who are you?" Krulex demanded, reaching for his sidearm. "I'm your death," Taehyun replied simply. The general never cleared his weapon from its holster. Meanwhile, Minho was conducting his own form of warfare from orbit. The Retribution's weapons could hit targets on the planet's surface with precision that amazed even him. Every shot was perfectly placed, turning Krix installations into crematoriums. "Target. Ammunition Depot 7, he said calmly, adjusting his aim. Firing. The depot vanished in a fireball that could be seen from space. Secondary explosions continued for 20 minutes as stored weapons cooked off in the heat. Target. Vehicle maintenance facility. Firing. Another explosion. This one took out not just the facility but also 30 Krix transport vehicles that had been parked nearby. Target. Barracks Complex 15. Firing. The barracks disappeared along with the 300 Krix soldiers who had been sleeping inside. Minho worked with the mechanical precision of someone who had learned his trade during humanity's darkest years. Each shot was calculated for maximum psychological impact. The Krix needed to understand that nowhere was safe. Jiwon was doing different work. She moved through the areas that Taehyun and Minho had cleared, looking for Vallani survivors. Her medical scanner could detect life signs through concrete walls and metal barriers. "Survivor cluster detected in Building 7, she reported. Approximately 40 individuals. Vital signs weak but stable. She found them in what had once been a Krix holding facility. 40 Vallani, mostly children, huddled together in a concrete room with no windows. They looked at her with large, frightened eyes, not understanding what this strange alien wanted. "It's okay," Jiwon said gently, pulling out her medical kit. "I'm here to help." She spoke in the Vallani language which she had learned during her medical training. The children began to cry, not from fear, but from relief. They had thought no one would ever come for them. Jiwon worked quickly, treating injuries and malnutrition with medicines that had been designed for human physiology, but worked on most alien species. The children were in terrible condition, but they would live. "These kids haven't eaten real food in weeks," she reported angrily. "The Krix have been keeping them on starvation rations." "How many more?" Hanul asked from orbit. "Scanner shows at least 200 survivor clusters across the continent. But Captain, some of these children have been surgically altered. The Krix have been using them for spare parts." Hanul's voice went cold. "Understood. Continue rescue operations." Yuna was conducting her own campaign of destruction. She had landed near the planet's main power grid and was systematically destroying every piece of infrastructure that kept Krix society running. Water treatment plants exploded in carefully timed sequences. Power distribution centers vanished in balls of fire. Communication towers toppled like cut trees. Transportation networks became impassable when Yuna's explosives turned bridges into rubble. "This is more than just military targets," she reported as she wired charges to a sewage processing facility. "I'm destroying their entire civilization." "Good," Hanul replied. "When we're done here, I want this planet to be uninhabitable for Krix. They can never come back." The Krix soldiers scattered across dozens of bases began to realize they were fighting something they didn't understand. Their enemies appeared from nowhere, struck with precision they had never seen, then vanished before retaliation was possible. "This is Outpost 23, screamed a panicked voice over the radio. "We're under attack by—" "I don't know what they are. They're not using vehicles. They're not using standard weapons. They're just killing everyone. Outpost 12 here. Our entire garrison is dead. What are we fighting?" Base 7 reporting. "The enemy destroyed our weapons depot, our vehicles, and our barracks. We have no ammunition, no transport, and nowhere to run." The psychological effect was devastating. Krix soldiers were used to being the monsters in other people's nightmares. Now they were the ones hiding in dark corners, afraid of shadows that might be death coming for them. Some tried to surrender. They raised white flags, threw down their weapons, and begged for mercy in broken galactic standard. They learned that humans had excellent memories. "Please," cried a Krix captain as Taehyun approached his position. "We surrender. We give up." "Did you accept surrender from Volani children?" Taehyun asked. "That was different. We were following orders." "So am I," Taehyun replied, and kept walking. By the end of the second day, organized Krix resistance had collapsed. The survivors fled into the wilderness, hoping to hide until rescue arrived. They didn't understand that no rescue was coming, and that humans were very good at hunting things that tried to hide. "Phase 2 complete," Hanul reported to his crew. "All major Krix installations destroyed. Enemy forces scattered and demoralized." "Survivor count?" Ji-Wan asked. "Approximately 3,000 Krix soldiers still alive and hiding. 2,000 Volani survivors recovered and receiving medical treatment." "What about Phase 3? Taehyun asked. Hanul looked at the scanner displays showing heat signatures scattered across the planet's surface. Each signature was a Krix soldier, hiding in a cave or forest, hoping the humans would leave them alone. "Phase 3 begins now," he said simply. "Find them all." The hunt continued through the night. Human persistence evolved from millions of years of tracking prey across impossible distances, proved more effective than any advanced technology. One by one, the hiding places were found. One by one, the survivors were eliminated. By dawn, Thessia, Prime belonged to the Volani again, but the work was not yet finished. Thessia Prime burned, but not with the fires of destruction. The flames that rose from the planet's surface were funeral pyres, massive bonfires that consumed the bodies of 50,000 Krix soldiers. Yuna supervised the burning with the same careful attention she had given to building bombs. The pyres were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, visible from orbit like a message written in fire across the planet's face. "All Krix remains destroyed," she reported. "No trace of their genetic material will remain on this world." This was important. During the corporate wars, humans had learned that some enemies tried to return even after death, using cloned bodies or uploaded minds. The Krix would get no such second chance. Ji-Wan worked in the medical centers that had been hastily built in the ruins of Volani cities. The survivors needed more than just physical healing. They needed to remember what it felt like to be safe. "How many?" Hanul asked as he watched her work. 2,137 Volani survivors," she replied without looking up from her patient. "Mostly children and teenagers. The Krix killed all the adults first." The Volani child she was treating looked up at Hanul with large, dark eyes. He was maybe 8 years old, with silver scars where the Krix had repeatedly harvested his organs. "Are the bad ones gone?" the child asked in broken galactic standard. "Yes," Hanul said simply. They're all gone. They can never hurt you again. The child nodded and closed his eyes. For the first time in 3 years, he felt safe enough to sleep. Taehyun emerged from the ruins of a Crix processing facility, carrying data storage devices in both hands. "I've found their complete records," he reported. "Names, dates, methods, everything they did to the Villani is documented." "Why would they keep such detailed records?" Jiwon asked. "Because they were proud of it," Taehyun replied with disgust. "They thought what they were doing was a great accomplishment. They wanted to remember every detail. The records would be useful later, when the humans had to explain their actions to the Galactic Council. Every Crix death could be justified by the evidence of their crimes. Minho was conducting final sweeps of the planet, making sure no Crix had escaped the purge. His scanners showed only Villani life signs now. The planet was clean. "No enemy survivors detected," he reported. "Thessia Prime is secure." As the crew worked, they received an urgent message from the Galactic Council. The transmission came through on emergency frequencies, marked with the highest priority codes. "Human vessel retribution," came the pompous voice of Council Speaker Valix. "You are ordered to cease all hostile activities immediately and withdraw from Sector 7 Delta. Any further aggression will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Council." Hanul listened to the message with amusement. The council that had ignored genocide for 3 years was now concerned about violence. "Yuna, send a reply," he ordered. "What should I tell them, Captain?" "Tell them we received their message, but we didn't find anyone here to negotiate with. It appears the Crix suffered some kind of extinction event. We are providing humanitarian assistance to survivors." The reply was technically true. There were no Crix left to negotiate with, and they had certainly suffered an extinction event. It just hadn't been a natural one. 3 weeks later, a council investigation ship arrived in the system. The investigators were a mix of species, some curious, some suspicious, all afraid of what they might find. "Where are the Crix?" demanded Investigator Zelen, a tall insectoid creature with mandibles that clicked when he spoke. "We didn't encounter any Crix forces," Hanul replied calmly. "When we arrived, we found evidence of a major military disaster. Perhaps they were destroyed by internal conflict." This was also technically true. The conflict had been very internal. Crix soldiers had died inside their own bases. "What about their ships?" asked Investigator Marin, a floating jellyfish-like creature. "We found debris fields in orbit. Appears to have been some kind of massive explosion. Perhaps a fuel accident or weapons malfunction." The investigators searched the system for 3 days, but they found exactly what the humans wanted them to find: a planet full of grateful Villani survivors and the burned remains of Crix military installations. "The Villani confirm your story," Investigator Zelen admitted grudgingly. "They say the Crix forces simply disappeared one night. No survivors were seen." "Terrible tragedy," Hanul said with perfect sincerity. "Perhaps the Crix simply weren't suited to the local environment." The investigators filed their report with obvious reluctance. They suspected what had really happened, but they had no proof and no witnesses willing to contradict the human version of events. The Galactic Council quietly updated humanity's classification from probationary species to allied enforcement partner. They had learned an important lesson. When Deathworlders decided that a problem needed solving, the problem tended to disappear permanently. The Villani survivors rebuilt their cities with human help. The new buildings were stronger than before, designed to last for thousands of years. In the central square of each city, they erected monuments to their dead, simple stone walls carved with the names of every Villani who had died during the 3-year occupation. At the bottom of each monument, in smaller text, was a single line, in human script, answered by those who came from the dark between stars. G1 established medical schools to train new Villani doctors. The children who had survived the Crix occupation would grow up knowing how to heal others who had suffered similar trauma. Minho helped design new defensive systems for Villani colonies. "Next time someone comes to hurt you," he told them, "you'll be ready." Taehyun trained Volani intelligence operatives in the arts of information gathering and infiltration. Knowledge is power, he explained. Never again will you be surprised by an enemy. Yuna taught Volani engineers how to build things that couldn't be easily destroyed. Your cities should be able to defend themselves, she said, even when you can't. Hanul filed his official report with Earth Command, using the careful language he had learned during the corporate wars. Responded to distress call from Sector 7 Delta. Found evidence of massive military disaster affecting Crick's forces in the region. Provided humanitarian assistance to Volani survivors. Situation resolved. Requesting permission to continue patrol duties. The report was approved without question. Earth Command understood the real meaning of phrases like situation resolved. As the Retribution prepared to leave Thessia Prime, the Volani held a ceremony. They called it the Festival of Silent Stars. A celebration of the day, death had come from space to answer their prayers. The Volani children, healthy now and no longer afraid, sang songs about brave warriors who traveled between the stars to help those who could not help themselves. They didn't know the warriors' real names, so they called them the Silent Guardians. Will you come back? Asked the same child Hanul had comforted weeks earlier. If you need us, Hanul promised. But I don't think you will. You're strong now. You can take care of yourselves. The child nodded solemnly. If other bad ones come, we'll be ready. Yes, Hanul agreed. You will be. As the Retribution slipped back into dark space, invisible to all sensors, the crew looked back at Thessia Prime one last time. The planet glowed with the lights of rebuilt cities and the fires of celebration. Message from Earth Command, Yuna. Reported, 3 more distress calls have been intercepted, all from sectors the Council has written off as lost causes. Hanul smiled for the first time in weeks. Set course for the nearest one. Looks like we have more work to do. In the darkness between stars, other predatory species began to receive reports of mysterious military disasters, ships that vanished without trace, armies that simply disappeared, planets where occupation forces suffered sudden and complete extinction events. The message spread quickly through the criminal networks and military hierarchies of species that preyed on the weak. Something new was hunting in the dark, and it was very good at its job. Some called them the Silent Death. Others whispered about ghost ships that appeared from nowhere and left only empty space behind. A few spoke of the Deathworld hunters, creatures from the dark planet Earth who had learned to kill from the cruelest teacher in the universe. But the children of rescued worlds had simpler names for them. They called them heroes, guardians, and the answer to prayers spoken in darkness. And in the space between stars, 5 humans continued their patrol, carrying justice to places where mercy had been forgotten and hope had died. The galaxy was a large place, full of monsters that thought themselves safe. They were wrong.